Journey started when we were 17.
Okay.
But even before that, because I think it was my father who was instilling the hard work in us. And we went there and we each had $100 and we put it into the bank account.
Okay.
And we were just watching it grow, right? Whatever the time was that I finished it in. And 18 something, right?
Okay.
And I'm like, wow, I'm done. And I'm like, I was tired,
Yeah.
but I wasn't like, oh, really? I felt like I wasn't going that fast. You know?
Okay.
It was just that pace. I got the pace and I just
kept going.
Yeah.
So preparation is a big thing.
philosophy. It's not like it's rocket science.
Okay.
And
So actually getting into your building now too. So your building complex that you have, when you first got that building complex, it didn't look like how it looked now.
Look like that.
So could you tell us kind of what was the process of?
From the beginning, that property took months to acquire, like
Okay.
months. It did not happen overnight. Most commercial, it takes a little bit longer. That one in particular was even longer yet, just because
And why?
the previous owner wasn't cooperating with lawyers, and the whole process was just taking longer than it should have. But that being said, the property when I bought it was basically a Section 8 property. It was like in shambles, and it was in disrepair, and obviously the person that owned it, he kind of wanted to wash his hands of it. And on paper, it looked actually pretty good, right? And I'm, the guy that owned it previously, he did some work to the exterior. It didn't look 100%, but
Yeah.
he put in new windows. He did some work on the roof. He put new siding on the build. Not siding. He put stucco, like a knockdown
Yes,
stucco.
yeah.
And he insulated. And so he did a little bit of work. But the inside of the building, which is a lot more labor intensive, he didn't do any of that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was prepared to do work.
To do work.
I was like, I knew what I was going to get into in that sense. Like the work on the building is fine. But the people, the part of the business
Yes.
is not what I was expecting. So we'll get into that. in a
Okay.
little bit.
Hey, just a quick question. So you said you were prepared to do the work. Did you like, I guess from your previous experiences, you knew like what the work would probably kind of look like that you would have to do on the building, or was it still you kind of maybe underestimated it when you went in and
definitely.
then it caught you off guard?
Oh, I underestimated it because it's commercial. So everything costs more, everything takes longer, everything is just more labor intensive, and everything's bigger, and it just takes more to do. And there was 23 units, so it's not something like a single family home where you can renovate a whole house in a couple months. And thinking, because we were pretty quick at it, and like, oh yeah, I kind of have the know-how, I can do it. But that's not the case, because it's very like the dynamics of the building. There's all these different. We'll get into it as our conversation progresses.
Yep.
But yeah, so the property looked really good on paper. And one of the things is when you're in real estate and you're trying to get into it, getting into the apartment market especially is actually not easy to do because you need money. And if you don't have money,
it's not gonna work.
And when you're getting apartments, 23, the banks want to see a lot of money, a lot of zeros.
Yeah.
And they want to see you have the ability to do it, and it's hard to prove yourself. So this building was education for me, and it was me proving myself. And I got the opportunity because the previous owner refinanced the building and got a really good mortgage at a really low rate. And he had it amortized. It was a CMHC mortgage amortized over 35 years, which I have no idea how he did that, but he did it. And because the way the building was, it should not have been that lucrative of a mortgage.
Yeah.
But on paper looked really good. And I didn't have a lot of cash, but I had equity in that property that we bought that was a flop. That me and my wife bought as our house. It was it became a rental property, and then we ended up buying something else. But I didn't want that as a rental property because it wasn't cash flowing. It was just, we couldn't sell it because the markets weren't good. And I just wanted to get rid of it. And we paid too much for it. We put too much into it. So it was a big loss. No matter what we did, we were going to lose money on it.
Okay.
Except with this deal. So part of this deal, and this maybe, I don't know if this could be creative, maybe not. I think assuming a mortgage is maybe not, maybe in this day and age, it is a little bit of a creative, there's more steps involved in that.
Okay.
And it's definitely cheaper when you're assuming a mortgage than it would be if you had to get your own CMHC mortgage. So that was that was a check mark in the right direction. The fact that it had more suites than I was, expecting that I would have, was another checkbox.
How many?
23
suites.
units,
Okay,
right?
23 units. Okay.
Not quite a blessing. In fact, maybe more of a curse now that I think of it, right?
Okay.
But at the time, I thought of it as, oh yeah, there's more units for,
More
and
people,
I
more
can get into
renters.
this, and it was just an opportunity.
Yeah.
So the universe was giving me this opportunity to maybe work on my interpersonal skills, or maybe my anger issues.
The sensitivity training was
sensitivity
coming
training.
back.
But I did the training,
Yeah.
and I
It's
learned
coming,
something. Maybe pick something up,
Yeah.
but now I had to put it into action, right?
Yeah.
So that was what the universe was saying,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking, oh, I can do this. I can make money, and one of the things was that the building was full of agency. It was all agency status tenants.
So what does that mean when you say agency status?
So agency status tenants are like, basically, if they weren't living there, they'd be homeless.
Okay.
Whether they have usually they have drug issues, or social issues. They're trying to escape a bad relationship, or something. Their lives are not desirable,
Okay.
right? And I'm like, oh, that's okay. Then we can help these people, and I had these ambitions to help them, and I wanted to. Really, I did. And I learned really quick. We'll get into it later, but I learned really quickly that they don't always want
your help. They don't
want your help.
They don't want your help.
And sometimes it's better not to waste your time
Yeah.
with it. But that's for another conversation, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was able to trade the equity, which is not usually there is trade sometimes in real estate. Someone will trade a house or whatever, but instead of trading the house, I traded the equity in the house.
Oh.
So I had it evaluated, and I had a line of credit on it. So
Okay.
whatever that equity was,
Uh-huh.
I think in the sense it wasn't a lot. I think it was like $80,000, right? But it went to the deposit, and plus he had the CMHC mortgage that had very little down on it. I didn't need to have that much money.
Oh.
So I bought a 23 unit apartment building for basically the equity that I had. And I was like, I'm getting rid of a problem that I wanted to get rid of for the past, 5 years or whatever. And I'm like, I just used my equity in this other property that I had as my down payment.
For this. Okay.
And then all I had to do is pay for my due diligence.
Yeah.
And then...
And what is
the
due
fees.
diligence? When you mean
Due diligence would be, in this sense, it was a little bit... Inspections. A lot of the stuff was already done.
Okay.
As part of the process for assuming the mortgage. In hindsight, I would do my own.
Okay.
So I kind of took what he did, and I kind of, trusted the previous owner maybe way too much.
Yeah.
Which I probably shouldn't have in the end. But I'm like, okay, most of this stuff is done, and then, I didn't have to really worry so much about the financing, because that's usually the biggest hurdle when you're buying these buildings is the financing.
Okay.
And I was going to get an awesome rate, and taxes were low, and for a couple of reasons. And it was just, I'm like, this is going to work. I can make this happen, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get money guaranteed from the government, because everyone's on social assistance or through the agencies, and they pay you by check, and it's guaranteed income, which is not, but that's what they say. And we'll go into that later, my trials and tribulations with that property. Mm-hmm. And it was just, I got to do this. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. I got to do it.
I got to get. Once I got my foot in there, I got
to get in, and it just got me in the door. So this goes back to what I was doing with acquiring jobs.
Yeah.
I was really good at getting jobs. I was really good at interviews.
Yeah.
I was good at winning the hearts over the HR team.
Yeah.
And I can get in there, right?
Yeah.
You tell them your life story. You tell them your story. They like to see,
character, a little bit, yeah.
When everyone else is going in and they're just trying to make it through the interview.
Right? You interacting with
the person.
And
then you're a little bit more, because I've done a lot of interviews, so you're maybe a little bit more relaxed, and you're doing, you're going into delving into different stories, and they like to hear that, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe that helped me get some jobs, and this was the next opportunity. So all those things I did before, like I was saying in our previous conversation,
they all played a role in
help. They're all my hats that I keep putting on that will help me with the next thing.
And so, okay, just before we continue going forward, actually quick, all right, what's the time? Yeah. No, what's how time was? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, no, I'm just making sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what were in all the previous kind of experiences, you know, your fire training, your engineering, you know, safety, what are like some of the biggest lessons that you learned from that helped you in your real estate now, or just helped you in general in life?
Yeah, and well, everything you learn in jobs, and you know, they help you in every aspect of your life, right? Even just confidence. So like, let's say you're starting something new, but you're really proficient at one thing. Like, let's, for instance, say like running, right? Or as a child, you were good at soccer or at another sport. That stays with you, right? So that helps you build that confidence. So that when you're doing things that are, you know, you're not good at, or that's hard, you always have in the back, you know what? I am good at something, right? I have this confidence that says, hey, I'm good at whatever, soccer, or, you know, this other thing that I used to do, engineering or whatever, right? But you're never born good at it. You have to work at it, right? So because you got to work at it, it'll give you that push to keep working at what you're doing now, even though you're not doing it well, and you're like, oh, you're struggling, and I can't do it. But you just put yourself into that mindset that I can do this because I've done that, right? And you just keep moving forward with that mentality, and you'll win every time. You know,
knowing that you can always improve, because everyone that has done something that's great, or you know, doing well in something like LeBron or Kobe or MJ, all these guys, they didn't start out like that. You know, MJ got cut from his high school team. Kobe, he was airballing shots in the finals and stuff like that. So, but what happened was that didn't stop them. They knew that if they wanted to be the greatest, they still have to put in the time and the effort and the work, and it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, right? And I think that's what you're saying here too. Is like, even if you're good at something else, when you start, like engineering, for example, it still took time to get there. You didn't you weren't good at English in the beginning, and you had to learn, and you had to fail that class, and you had to learn from those failures to get to that point, right? So now continuing into your real estate of this building now. If I'm not mistaken, I remember you telling me there was like a chop shop in the building. There was
day one. Let's go to day one of owning this building. I got this fictitious key. It basically didn't open anything, right? But it was like, oh, here's the key for the building. The doors didn't close. It was just a wide open door, right?
Oh, wow.
And then in the basement, there was a board with a bunch of keys on it. And I tried to figure out what these keys were for. I found they opened some doors, and I didn't have any keys to any units.
Wow.
It was just horrible. There was a guy living in the basement. And he had a little chop shop down there. He's selling bikes. So all these people that with stolen bikes would bring their bikes to my building, and they would end up in the basement, and he'd rip them apart in my boiler room.
So they had a whole operation in your building.
They had an operation down there. My tenants were making more money than me because they were like renting, like during major stadium events, because it's near the stadium. Yeah, they would rent out the parking lot, like parking, right? So they fill it up with parking, and they're like, they'd have a little couch set up, you know, outside. And they're charging people cover to sit with them, and these aren't like the people you want to hang out with either. Right?
Entrepreneurs, though.
They're very smart, right? And so that's what I had to deal with from the start, right? Yeah. The guy that was living he shouldn't have been down there. It's illegal for him to live down there, right? He was the so-called resident manager of the building. Okay. He had the keys, right? He didn't let me have them, even though I was the owner.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And he didn't want me to have them.
Yeah, he didn't want you to stop his operation.
I'm certain he was doing some illegal stuff in there too, right?
Yeah.
But I couldn't do anything about it. My thing was, I got to get this building straightened out. Yeah. And I didn't know where to start. So walking in from into the building, it was like Section 8, like, you know, in the movies, there's those Section 8 houses. Yeah. People like screaming in the building, people yelling. People having a fight, an argument. There's like someone crying. Like you walk in, there's a bum. I don't know, maybe not a bum. That's not the right word. Maybe like a vagabond. Yeah. He was sitting on the step, and then I look at him. I'm like, "Ooh, do you live here? Or do you? Oh no, I'm just waiting for somebody, right? That's their go-to." I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I didn't really know how to like, okay. I'm like, okay, that's weird. I'm like, oh, well, you know, you're kind of blocking the stairs. Maybe you just move, like, you know, you wait outside. Yeah. And he didn't take that. He didn't take to that too lightly, right? He didn't want to be told what to do. Yeah. He had anger issues too. Oh yeah. So then I go into the basement, try to sort out what's going on down there. And there was garbage everywhere. Like everything was It was just a horrible, moving into. I go back upstairs, and that vagabond that was there, he took a dump.
Oh,
In the middle of the
wow.
of the vestibule, and I said, did you? And there's cameras there.
Yeah.
I did not look at the cameras. I didn't care. I knew it was him. It was good enough for me. And I told him, I said, "Was that you?" I was like, that caught me up. I wasn't expecting to see like a human turd on the floor, right? And and he was getting angry with me, and like even more. I'm like, "Oh man," I don't want to see you here. I want you to clean that up right away and get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then at that point, I'm like, what the hell did I just do? What did I buy?
What did I buy?
And then I come back, and the guy's gone, except his turd is smeared all over a door, all over the side, like on the wall. I'm like, oh my god, children, like maybe some children do this kind of stuff, or maybe animal.
Yeah,
and even most I have a pet dog.
Yeah,
he doesn't do that. He might roll in like beaver dung, but that's about it. Right? Yeah, he's not like doing that, smearing it all over. Like that was just like repulsive.
Yeah,
and that's what I had to do with
first
day
day.
One. First day, and there was some guy knocking on the door in the basement in a furious fashion. He's like, "Oh, where's this character that was living there?" I don't want to say his name, and he had this. I saw he had this baton, this stick. He's like he was gonna beat him. I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean? Like, what's going on?" "Oh, he's got my bike," and there's like, there's like all these arguments and like dynamics happening in the building. And
so what was going through your head? And I'm like, after those like those little few instances in that first day, what's going through your head? You're like, man.
Well, I was like, I'm like, what the hell did I do? I did not know at that point. I did not know what I was getting into. I was thinking more like the building, the asset. I could do renovate the units, and But the fact that it was filled with these people that had mental health issues, right? It's a real problem, right? But over time, I learned to understand how to deal with these people. And a lot of it is you got to be calm, right? And aggression will get these guys going, right? So you got to be calm. But you also have to be aggressive with them when it's time to be. You just got to know when to do it, right? So when they're overstepping, then it's time to push them, right? But learning that was difficult, right? Like even just the rent payment, that wasn't a smooth situation. Like it took months and months because it was kept going to the previous owner, and
it was going to the
previous owner. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Because even though the notes went out, like none of this stuff was. These people aren't responsible enough to tell their worker, "Oh yeah, there's a new owner," right?
So he was just collecting the payments.
Well, he was paying me, but it was like more of a headache, and like it was hard to rectify your accounts, and it was painful. So month one, I think, was the first month I cash flowed. I cash flowed like $100 or $200 on that first month.
Oh wow!
And then that was it. I didn't cash flow until just recently because I had to put in renovations.
All that stuff. Yeah.
Like I redid the entire building. Yeah. Like, but where do you start with something like that? It's not a game of just empty out the top floor and just get to go to town. Yeah. No, it's not. You can't do that because without that revenue coming in, you can't pay your bills. Utilities or your taxes and the bank was my biggest fear, right?
Yeah. And
insurance. You lose your insurance, you lose your loan, you lose your loan, you lose the building. And there was a time when in that area, and I'm glad I kind of switched it around before that happened. So just recently here, when I renewed my insurance this last time, people weren't getting renewed because of all the fires that were happening, like all the floods, all the problems because of the demographic in that area. So that postal code, the insurance companies knew.
As soon as they see that postal code,
we don't want nothing to do. No. We don't want to insure you. I had to prove myself to them that I did all this renovations, all this work, just to get insurance. And I'm thinking, I'm going to give them all this stuff, and they're going to give me a discount. And my insurance broker laughed at me. I'm like, what do you mean? And he scared me. He's like, you know what? Some people aren't even getting insurance. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, I'm going to start sending you information that's going to show you all the work I did. And I'm like, on top of it, I'm like, I have vacancies, but I'm in them every single day. And I'm like, and I'm like, I document everything. I'm like, I have a logbook. I'm just throwing them all this paperwork I had because they love paperwork, right? And that's what saved me. So they said, oh, we're going to renew you. And we're only going to raise it 12%. Okay. So over the years I've owned it, like they doubled it every single year. It was doubled, right? And this one, I was worried they weren't even going to renew it.
Yeah.
So by only having 12%, where do I sign?
Yeah.
I'm ready. Let's just do this, right?
Yeah.
I was afraid I was going to lose my mortgage, right?
Yeah.
And thankfully I didn't. Everything worked out. But there was people that I know that had issues with the same problem, right?
Yeah.
And
that was that because
those are serious hardships to have.
Yeah, no. Even you were telling me actually, one of the things is so now in the process of that, getting your insurance, getting yourself renewed.
Yeah.
How did you? So you come into this building. And there's guys pooing in the.
Yeah. Is it as bad as it could get?
Smearing it all over the place.
Tenant profile. You'd have junkies, prostitutes, drug dealers like on every floor.
Okay.
You'd have, every single, and those kind of people, they invite gangs in the building.
Yeah.
All these, these problem people, right?
Yeah.
That aren't good for your building.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because new tenants. Yeah.
How do you change that demographic?
Yes.
How do you go from the worst of the worst, like D tenants, where you cannot rent to these people?
Speaking of that, just saying D tenants. So I know you categorize your tenants, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Could you just give us a breakdown of how you categorize those tenants?
I think other people do it better.
Okay.
But like I look at it, like an A-list tenant would be someone that keeps their place immaculate. Someone that always pay their rent on time or early, right? Or, they don't complain. If something breaks, they'll fix it themselves and I don't have to worry about it. And they don't complain about a lot of stuff. Basically, you set it and forget it kind of tenant. And then when they leave, the place is like immaculate, perfectly clean. There's no issues and there's good communication. They always pay on, like, that's an A-list tenant, right?
Yeah.
They make your life easy. They're friendly. They're respectful. A-list. Then B-list would be, someone a little bit rough around the edges. They might, they might be a little bit late on the rent, but generally they're always on time, they might be more of a, call you every now and then complaining about a few little things or other tenants or, stuff like that. And then a C tenant would be, it starts getting a little bit worse as you go along.
Yeah.
D tenant would be someone that you do not want to rent to. They will never pay your rent on time. They will destroy your property. They will destroy your common areas. They will scare the rest of your tenants out. They're just not rentable. And that demographic
was what you had
was
in the,
what I
had in the whole building. Okay.
And it was entirely, well, I wouldn't say everyone was like that.
Yeah.
But
majority.
80% or more. I think of it now, how many of my tenants were actually good? And I can only think of 2.
Wow.
And one of
in
them
23
units, only 2 tenants were worth keeping.
Okay.
2. So how do you evict that many people? And those people are really difficult to evict.
Yeah. So how did you go about the process? So how did you go about the process of turning from D-list tenants to getting A-list tenants now? Okay,
so I went. It was, some of it was kind of just happened. So when it continued on like that for a while because I'm like I wasn't really sure what I had to do, but I'm like I knew I needed the cash flow. I needed the money come in so I could pay the rent and pay my bills, right? And so I kind of let things go, and I let it go for a while. And then finally, when things just got too much, when you're always getting calls from the police at 2 a.m, every night, the fire department's calling you because the fire alarms are off and you got to rush to the building to shut off the fire alarms and all these things. Everyone's on your case. Alberta Health Services is on your case. And days before I was going to take possession of this building, Alberta Health Services was going to condemn the entire building because it had every single problem. Bed bugs, it had cockroaches, it had leaks everywhere, it had mold issues, asbestos, it had every single possible problem you can have. It had. And I saved it. I happened to be there when they were there doing their inspection. And somehow I convinced them to give me a chance to fix it. And I did. It took me 3.5 years, but I did fix it. And they thought I basically did the impossible. When you talk to them now, they're like, wow, yeah, nobody's done that, right? And it was a very difficult thing. And the simplest way I can say it was it didn't happen all at once. And the easy way to look at it is a D-list tenant will be tolerated only by a C-list tenant. So you cannot have a building that has that's like that has any B-list tenants. They'll be gone. They won't even come to your building, right? So the idea was, okay, if I can have a C-list tenant, I can handle that. So let's work on just getting C-list tenants. So I would cater my units to those. I would rent to those kind of people. Not the best tenants, but at least it's better than a D-list tenant. And then I would always get the worst one off. But many times it was more of an eviction that had to happen. It wasn't like, you screwed up so bad, now I have to evict you. And the eviction process is laborious. That is probably the worst thing about real estate, and especially residential or apartments, or if you're going to do single family, is dealing with tenant issues. And then you have to evict them. Is the whole process on it. Eventually, what I did is I hired it out to a professional, and I don't even touch that anymore. Like I'll do the legwork, the beginning. Like I give them all the paperwork. Like, oh yeah, here's your warnings. Always do the paper because the judges like to see paper. Yeah. Like I gave them lots of chances, and they didn't make them sign this document that says they're going to pay the rent, and I'm going to give them a payment plan, and all. Like it's a lot of paper that you push. And as an engineer, you learn that paper is your friend, and as in safety as well. Paper is your friend. You're always throwing paper at stuff because at the end of the day, it's liability, and that's what's going to save you in the end. Like, who's more credible?
Okay?
Me or this guy who's basically looking at his phone to try to find like a video or a picture or something, right? And so building that credibility is kind of what I did, and I would just always evict the worst and start fresh. Sure. And I would do renos, but I wouldn't do full renos. I would do 50 or 80% renos. Okay. Because I'm catering to a C tenant, right? They don't need it perfect. Okay. And then as I would go, I would convert all the units to like brand new units.
Brand new. Okay.
So.
Sorry, one second. Continue.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of the process I followed in a nutshell. It wasn't that easy because like there's tenants that you're willing to tolerate, and it's not time to get rid of them, but they're like, oh, I need a bigger unit. And you're like, okay, you know what if I put you over here? Because I know you'll tolerate that person. And they'll tolerate you. So then there'll be no issues if I put you there. So you're moving people in the building. That's, again, a laborious task, but you're not losing the tenant. So you're doing a lot of that stuff and trying to make it work. But I constantly, from when I started this process, always had a fair number of renovations going on, and always continuous renovations. And then vacancies. And when you're doing vacancies, there's a renovation. Renovation. And renovations are expensive. Vacancies are expensive. And it takes months to get them going. And one time I think I had like 11 vacancies. During, I think it was prior to COVID, actually.
So when you have those kind of vacancies, you got to, like, you that means that's
so
11 units.
11 units that aren't getting, and you're paying money to renovate them so that you can get the better demographics. And appliances and everything adds up. It's extremely expensive. You have AHS on your tail about, oh, there's mold in this unit, and you gotta, needs to be caulked and all these things. Like, then there's some that it's like there's so many things that you have to rip it apart. You can't fix this. It's not fixable. It's so old, it's falling apart. There's mold. Like, you can't. It's worth just getting rid of the whole thing and starting over, right? So that was. And then every time that happens, you're like, oh, and I gotta find the money for this, right? So it ended up becoming a self-fund. I had to self-fund this thing, otherwise, the banks aren't going to give you money to do this.
Yeah, no one's gonna,
I was afraid to actually even ask the bank.
Yeah.
Right. So I would self-fund, and I'd do a lot of the work myself to try to keep the costs down. And but you can't. You need help with stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
It was too overwhelming, and very stressful, and. I'm glad that part of it's done. I still have problems with it, but it's not those kind of problems, right?
So how did you, like I said, what you just said, I'm sure there was lots of stress involved with doing like doing that.
More stress than I'm willing to to admit, and more stress that I'd want to wish onto an enemy.
Yeah.
It's like dark times, basically.
So how did you kind of deal with that? Like what was your mindset when that was happening? Kind of like during those kind of dark periods of time, and how did you kind of like move past that? What advice would you give to somebody else who maybe might be in a similar situation with a building unit, or is going to go into a unit and it starts like that?
That's a tough question, because it wasn't long ago that I had hit a dark patch, dark patch, because everything was going wrong, and actually that dark patch was what I needed to, like, instead of holding on to those damn D tenants or C tenants, I cut them all loose all at once. It was like rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of needed to do, is get rid of those, really, because they're the ones causing the grief. They're the ones causing the problem. And I'm kind of in that situation right now, because I have a few tenants that are causing me the most grief. I'm like, it's always these tenants. And there's not a lot. I'm like, only problem is, like, it's like hard to rent to good tenants, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for, I'm like, if I only had a full building, I would evict them. Yeah. And I'm like, I wouldn't even bat an eye or think twice.
Yeah.
But I've always had vacancies to deal with, and vacancies are, in my opinion, the kiss of death, right? It'll ruin you, right? And I'm always worried about vacancies, and vacancies is, you have to put your sales hat on. But it's hard to put your sales hat on when you're doing renos and you're trying to do everything, and then you're dealing with the area, the demographic, and there's only so much you could do in the area. But over time, every little you put in, like that 1% better, right?
Yes, sir.
Every day you leave 1%, even though you're like, oh, today wasn't a good day. But my mentor was there helping me do these renos a lot. He's like, oh, today was a good day. I'm like, no, what do you mean? Today was a horrible day.
Yeah.
We didn't get what I wanted done, right? Because my list was so long. And he's like, because no, we did good. Look what we did. This was a lot of work. Like, like, it wasn't just like a simple fix, right? Most things were more involved in fixing, right? And if you put that 1% in, sometimes it's a 2% day or a 5%. Like, you have an awesome day. You just get so much done. And over time, you're like, hey,
it adds
it's not
up.
so bad, right?
Yeah, it adds up.
And then before you know it, like the community's noticing, like, people are starting to walk on my side of the street.
Because you were saying earlier, people would actually avoid your
building and walk around to other
sides
side,
right?
Of the street. So people was, okay, now people are starting to walk over here, and then people feeling more safe. And I was trying to figure out ways to make it safe, and that's why I went to the police, and they helped me get on the multifamily crime-free housing program, which I'm now fully immersed in, just recently, actually, the past couple weeks.
And what does that program kind of do?
So that program kind of helps. So all the tenants sign an addendum with that program, right? It is actually a really good program, because it kind of pushes away anybody who wants to start doing crime. And that's what these gangs will do. They want to infiltrate these buildings and run their business out of your building, right? Run their chop shop, run their drug pushing, prostitution, whatever. They want it because it's perfect location, and it's downtown, and we got lots of clients, and when they die, whatever, we'll get new ones, right? And they want that. But if they see the sign, multifamily crime-free housing program, then you're in it.
That's a little deterrent.
They know the police have a key.
Yeah.
They know I got cameras everywhere, and they're working. They know. That's why I show everybody the camera. I show them on my phone. Look, this is the feed I'm getting on, and it's in real time. And I show them, like, it's 1 second delay, so I get it right away, right? And it's being recorded. I show them that it's being recorded, and that's my sales part. Like, because I need the tenants to feel safe and secure in the building, despite the location, right? Like, how do you it's a gem on the inside, but the outside, the neighborhood isn't the best. But doing all the work I did, it pushed a lot of that badness away, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it was being attracted by my building, because those people were in the building. They were running the building, right?
Yeah.
They were selling the drugs out of my building. The gangs were, doing whatever they do in my building. So of course they're coming there, right? And they're taking over. So how do you get rid of them? Is the $1 million question.
Yeah. And so it's a process. I would say it's a process. And
and that goes to that 1% thing.
At 1% every day 1%.
And before you know it, like, wait, you train the whole neighborhood. Like, all the other drug houses around here are gone.
Yeah.
All the other bad problems in the fighting. There's less of it, or not. Like now, there's almost next to nothing. But there's still a lot of vagrants that are coming around, right? It's just the nature of the core, right? But it's better.
Oh yeah, compared to from the start to like till now,
Compared
it's
to
like
the
night
start,
and day.
You know what? It'd be nice if you can interview people that seen it from the beginning,
Yeah,
and they can tell you like it's just an amazing transformation. The
Yeah.
inside, the outside, it's like, you know, it's a 107-year-old building that you would never know. Like you've seen it,
Yeah.
you would never know that it's that old.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it looks like it's brand new.
yeah. And we'll have to get I don't know if you have any pictures from
Yeah.
before and from before.
I have some
to now.
before and after
Yeah,
pictures. Yeah,
yeah, because we'll have to get some.
I even have
show.
some videos. I don't know if we can show those. But
Yeah, I think we can. Or he knows how to do all that stuff.
yeah.
That would be dope.
Like,
No,
like my camera, I've always had cameras in the building. I've improved it because I've changed the system and then I've added cameras to the building. So now I've got more eyes there, right? But I've had stuff on those cameras that is stuff that I want to forget.
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
And yeah, I have some of the videos, but some of them I don't.
yeah. Okay,
But I've
okay.
seen bad
Bad
stuff.
things
On those.
go- yeah.
I mean, my first month again back, you know, the
Yeah,
bum.
yeah.
That same month, I had 3 deaths in my building,
Oh wow,
all fentanyl related deaths.
oh wow,
So it goes back to the drugs and the dealers in the building selling bad drugs, and
Oh,
they
wow.
don't care, right?
oh wow.
And so it becomes a safety
So-
thing for you and
'cause
your
it's-
the tenants, and like, because you just touch the doorknob
Yeah.
and you can die. So you got
Holy.
from that. So
Wow.
COVID protocol for me
Was like a
was
beautiful
way before COVID was a thing.
thing.
I was double gloved. I changed my clothes at work every single day. I would wash when I put my new clothes on. When I get home, they come off in the garage. They get washed every single night, and I'm in the shower.
Wow.
I never wanted to bring anything home.
Thing-
Bugs,
Nothing.
nothing. Especially, I was mostly afraid of the fentanyl.
Yeah.
And like germs. So it's kind of
Yeah.
germaphobe.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore because I deal with
Yeah.
just really gross stuff, right? And just, you know,
Oh,
you,
there's
you
a lot.
learn, like you learn,
Yeah.
like you don't wish that on anyone,
But yeah.
you know. Yeah, it's like I remember that first time one of my tenants was a prostitute,
Yeah.
and she always paid her rent in cash, but she got it from the bank and
Yeah.
it came in the envelope. But every time I'm like, oh, I don't really want, and I'd take the cash,
cash.
like this to
It's-
the envelope, and I just like stick it in a little bag,
Yeah.
and I go home and I take wipes. But this is before COVID,
Yeah.
so Lysol wipe, and I'd wipe every single bill,
Yeah.
and then I'd take it to the bank.
Yeah.
It repulsed me. It was just so
Yeah.
weird. Like, this is really truly dirty money, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In the end, she was not the worst tenant I had.
Yeah.
She actually lasted the longest because I'd always like work from the worst and
Yeah.
start cutting, right?
Yeah.
Someone would die, so then all of a sudden I have a vacancy,
vacancy,
right?
yeah,
So that
yeah.
was when they die, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, for that,
because you don't have to evict them.
Yeah.
But there's different different things you got to do and techniques to try to get rid of people because it's really difficult to
Yeah.
get rid of a tenant.
Yeah.
It takes a long time and
Long process. Yeah.
it's a process. Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah.
And so for somebody who wants to get into real estate or who wants to eventually own a building complex, where would they start? And like, what would be some of the tips that you would give them from your experience, having been doing it for so many years?
Yeah.
What are some of the pitfalls that they could avoid and how would they get started?
You know what? To get started, I know a lot of people say this, and it's true. You got to do it. You got to start it. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you
you were
always
telling me
just
that.
keep talking about doing it. You'll
Yeah.
never do it.
Yeah.
It's with everything, right? I think still do your due diligence. Don't overpay. You're gonna make mistakes, but don't give up. Like if you give up, you'll never do it, right?
Yeah.
And I there was a time when I had and things weren't going good. I gave up on real estate, and then it called me back for some reason, right? For whatever the universe wants me to do something, and this is what it was. And I never thought I'd get back into it, and I did.
Oh, so why did you quit the first time?
So I remember I said my brother, me and him were like we did these rental properties together. Well, when I'm like, I am done with real estate because all these headaches and problems, because it's not always easy, right? It's not always like a payday or, like there's a lot of work that's involved in it. And I'm like, I'm done. We sold our commercial building and I kind of put the money into my personal residence and I'm like, hey, done. I'm done with this for a while. I'm going to concentrate on my business, my safety business. And my brother kept doing real estate, and he's owned a lot of real estate in BC and in Edmonton, and he's actually in the process of selling another one of his properties, and he's doing well, right? And he's doing commercial, and he was the one who wanted to get into apartments, but then he didn't, right? And then I'm the stupid one that got into it. But in the end, maybe I'm not the stupid one because I'm hoping my payday is going to come in very soon.
Yeah.
After all the
work
and the learning that I've done, I can do it again.
Yeah.
And the fact, like I said, you got to just do it, and if you don't, then you'll never do it.
Yeah.
Right? You'll never get there. You'll never say you've been in real estate.
Yeah.
And just the advice would be, do your due diligence and, get help, get mentors. But do it. That's the only thing.
Just go for
it. Go for it and try to make it as clever as you can, and you got to be able to solve the problems that you're going to come into. Lots of problems.
Yeah. No, I like that because I think that's the same kind of sentiment that me and Ori share in the podcast is that like with the podcast, you just have to start it. We could be talking about it, we're going to start a podcast. It's never going to happen unless we come and actually shoot the podcast episode and start it. It doesn't happen without doing that. And along the way, from like when we first start, we're not that great. But as time goes on, you learn different things. Like, oh, you know what? I learned this thing about the podcast. Oh, I learned this thing that we can do. Oh, maybe this way, right?
Yeah, you learn from your mistakes.
You learn from your mistakes, right? And that's the big thing about this podcast is we want to always be sharing the mistakes, the struggles, the failures, because that's, I think, the biggest lessons.
Oh, yeah.
And like you said, 1% better each day, right? If 1% adds up until it becomes what? 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%.
And you don't even notice it. Until you look back like, hey, wait. You might be looking at an old email like, oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, hey, wait, I don't even have that problem anymore.
Exactly.
Because I solved it. It's done. It's in the past, right?
Exactly. And so...
it's you don't notice it. And like I said, it'll transform you. It'll transform everything you're doing. And but you got to do it. Like Jordan.
You got to do it, man.
Just do it.
You just got to do it.
If you don't, you failed. You already failed before you did it.
Exactly. And that's I think that's a big thing is that I don't really think that there's anything. Well, I don't think there's anything such as failure unless you don't pursue the thing that you want to do. Failure is only if you just give up.
Yeah.
Right? But if you keep trying, even if it's not working out the way that you want to right away, you got to keep trying.
Yeah.
And I
always
think
do it. Yeah.
Always do it. And I think that's a big thing. I want to ask you, so kind of in totality, what would you
back to the way you were saying, like advice? Like, Grant Cardone is like, go big, go home, or if you don't do it, like get 50 units, get as many units as you possibly can.
Yeah.
You're starting out, start small.
Yeah.
Yes. Get a single family, maybe a duplex, or like if you want to go commercial right away, like honestly, 5-6 units, because if you fall, it's a small fall, right? And you can probably bounce back from that. And it's also easier to acquire those kind of buildings.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know about starting off big.
Huge, yeah.
Start off small and learn, make small mistakes.
Make small mistakes.
And then you can work later on the bigger stuff.
Okay. And due diligence is very key.
Due diligence is huge.
Yeah. And due diligence involves like inspections and
everything,
and just getting all your stuff, making sure everything is set and safe and ready to go. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you just say are, I guess, the two biggest lessons that what is the biggest or hardest obstacle that you've had to face so far in your life, and how did you overcome it, and what did you learn from it?
Okay.
And then we'll go into our kind of final question.
That's a hard question. It might stump me a little bit, but the hardest thing I ever had to do, or any that I've encountered, what? I wouldn't say it's like one hard thing. I would say more like it was a bunch of little hard things. Like, how like the success is all those hats you put on, and then you get there. I think all those little problems you have are big problems. And I think the biggest one for me maybe is that I've kind of improved on is my anger. Not maybe I wouldn't say anger, but my ability to deal with my emotions. Right. Okay. So my mentors helped me look within and find that, like, calm in my head, you know, and maybe one day I'll be the one teaching
to somebody else. Okay,
that's the idea.
Okay, and so do you think that finding that calm has really helped you so far in your life?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Even in the past 3 years, like,
Yeah.
not from what I've seen since I've owned that property.
Yeah.
Other things don't faze me. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when my kids do something, my wife is all, you know, she's losing her mind.
Yeah.
And me is like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Could be
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah. Could
You
be,
know,
yeah.
it could be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
they didn't put holes in the wall. Even
Yeah.
that I wouldn't care that much about, because usually that's what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, you can just fix it and stuff. Yeah.
That's fixable. That's
Yeah.
easy to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So it could always be worse. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So,
And that's something that that really resonates with me, because even just like in my experience in the hospital, you know, when I was in there and I was injured and, you know, my kidney was split. Yeah, it was a really tough situation. It was really bad. But there was another guy just in the room right next to me, and his situation was way worse than me. He had, you know, he was in a wheelchair. His legs were amputated.
Yeah.
He had a hole in his stomach, you know, and that was something that I realized too, is it can always, you think you have it bad, but someone else has it way worse than you. And that's where, like, the big thing about your mindset, I think, is very, very huge.
Yeah.
I think mindset is a huge component to everything. Depending on how you look at it, if you choose to have the right mindset, then even if you're in a bad situation, you can turn it around.
Exactly. You just got to put it into perspective, right? That's
Exactly.
basically all you're doing.
Exactly.
It's like, it could be worse. And then you just look around, it's like, yeah, it could be worse.
Exactly.
Like, I could be the tenant.
Exactly.
My building. And maybe in another life I was, or I am, and maybe
Yeah.
I'm paying the karma back or something. I don't know.
Exactly. You know, so one of our kind of like key question, or kind of a themed question is, what is your theory of the grind?
Theory of the grind. Never give up, I would say. Like, always try to look at the problem and solve it. You know, thinking outside the box kind of thing.
Think outside the box.
Exactly, right? And always, you know, not giving up, and just being like, you know, they say, oh, be positive. It's easier said than done, but you got to learn how to, like, control your mind, right? And just
I like that.
Just containment.
Containment,
Right?
yes.
I finally realized what he meant by that, right?
Yes.
Containment, just be calm.
Yeah.
And his background was martial arts, right?
Yes. Okay.
So
I could see that.
He was like a ninja, and like I call him ninja because he had 5 black belts.
Oh wow.
He's a very interesting guy.
Oh wow.
He could be your next
interviewee.
interviewee.
Yeah, no, that would be very cool, actually. That's I like that, because never giving up, you know, always pursuing your dream, regardless of, you know, how difficult it might seem.
And never let someone say you can't do it. That one for sure. If someone says you can't do it, you will find a way. If you want it bad enough, you will find a way.
And that is also, those are gems, because one of the things is that a lot of times I think people when people say that you can't do something, is because maybe they feel like they can't do that thing, so they put their limitations on you.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, sometimes people will just take that limitation as their own.
That's exactly
own.
true.
And then you're like, oh, I can't do it. But that's not necessarily true, right? And so I think you gotta know for yourself that you can do it. So that confidence comes in,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
From a failing and realizing that you can, but succeeding at the same time, knowing
Yeah.
that you can do those things. So I love that. I love that. Okay, so that is actually our last question would be, who do you think would be who do you like to see on the podcast next?
Oh, it's a tough one.
I know you mentioned a couple names. So.
Oh yeah. So like, there is a lady that I think would be good on here.
Okay.
She's a success story, right?
Okay,
And
okay.
she owns a grocery store in Edmonton. She's an Italian grocery store.
Okay.
Teresa Spinelli. I
Teresa
think
Spin-
she would be a good person on your podcast.
Okay.
And she reminds me a lot of one of your other guests.
Oh, Maria.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, her name was Maria. And when I saw her, I'm like, she like looks like Teresa.
Yeah.
And in my head, I always think Teresa's name is Maria.
See,
So it's like she's got the Maria kind of vibe. to
Okay,
her, right?
okay.
And I think you guys would really like her too.
Okay.
She's bubbly like that, and like,
Okay. Well, definitely. Now, so the key to that question is that anytime we ask that question, you also have to be able to. We ask the question, and the guest has to be able to give us it has to have an in with that person so that we can be able to get a hold of that person. So
Yeah.
hopefully
I'll
we can
put
do
the
that.
bug in her ear.
Okay, that would be different. Well, man, Vince, it was a pleasure, absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank
I
you
think
very
you
much.
dropped a lot of gems, a lot of really cool insight, especially into your building and how you went from where it was to what it is now, and some of the struggles and obstacles that you had to face to get there. We probably will have you on again too in the future.
Yeah.
But it was absolute pleasure. Is there anything that you want the people to know? If you guys are looking for places to rent, you know where to go.
I have a couple vacancies, but I'm also selling my building.
Okay.
So it's actually at an auction.
Okay.
And there's only a couple days left in the auction.
Okay.
So if somebody wants to,
Hey,
if it doesn't sell, then maybe you can still put a bid on it through the real estate agent.
Okay.
And just do it the normal conventional way.
Okay.
But I'm hoping that it sells in the next couple of days.
Okay. So
then I can move. And going back to what before is, I'm ready to move on to the next
to the next thing.
right?
So what's the next thing for you?
I think I might. I think it's gonna be like real estate and
Yes.
apartments and stuff. Because now that I got this
Experience
and background, I just want to do it the smart way. The way that I would, if I was telling myself 3 years ago, what would you do differently? And I would be there mentoring myself, say, do this, this, and this.
Okay.
And it might be constructing apartment building, but have some criteria in my head that it definitely has to be these things.
Yeah.
It'll make my life easier. So that's
Okay.
kind of what I'm hoping to do anyway.
Okay.
If I can sell this thing off and then kind of regain my composure and move on to the next thing.
Okay. Well,
The next hurdle.
okay. Well, that sounds pretty exciting. We'll have to. Well, now we definitely have to have you on because now we have to know what happens in the future here now.
Yeah. It is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay. Well, we are out. You guys know what to do. The Grind Theory podcast. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe to our channel. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. Make sure you guys, if you guys are trying to buy a building complex, place a bid on Vince's building. And I guess if it doesn't sell,
it'll still be for sale.
so it'll be for sale. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but there's vacancies there as well if you guys are looking for rental properties. So it was a pleasure to have you on, Vince. Thank you so much. Yeah. And we'll do this again here soon.
Thank you very much for having me. It was nice seeing you again.
No problem.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
And we are out.